Good evening. I'm going to call to order the, what day did you say, the June 4th meeting of the Planning Commission. At this point, I would ask you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioner Jones, as I understand, has just walked into the room. So that is, timing is everything. Mr. Attorney, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Allow me to read the following procedure statement. Planning Commission advises council on applications for rezoning, land development code amendments, street closures, and long-range plans and policies. The Commission holds legislative hearings, meaning that anyone wishing to speak on a request may do so. The Commission issues a recommendation based on consistency of the request with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code and consistency of a request with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and other relevant adopted plans and policies. All matters requiring the Commission action shall be presented to the Commission by the staff and the applicant. In a situation where the staff is the applicant, there will only be one presentation. In order, the city staff will make their first presentation and the applicant will follow up with the second presentations. Both presentations are limited to 5 minutes each. And as always, if the chair decides to open that aperture a little bit, we have the ability to do that. Public hearing, the chair will open the public hearing to those physically present wishing to speak about an item. Those in favor of an item shall be heard first, followed by those opposed by an item. 10-minute time limit will be allowed for comments in favor, as well as 10 minutes for comments opposed. Staff member, Ms. Painter, will keep track of the 10-minute time periods and notify the speaker at the 5-minute mark, 1-minute mark, and verbally call time. The chair may extend these time periods, as I said. Groups and organizations present and desiring to comment are asked to appoint a spokesperson to present their concerns or point of view to the Commission. Public has been encouraged to submit their comments in writing via a web-page form located on the City Manager's website. All comments received prior to 3 p.m. today were forwarded unedited to the Planning Commission. Amy, I'm assuming we've had no emails or comments from anything? None, okay. All comments received are delivered to City Council as the item advances. Votes will be voice votes after proper motions are made and consistency statements are read into the record. The chair will state the outcome of the vote and the action. If there is an appeal, rezoning requests that receive an unfavorable recommendation may be appealed by the applicant to the Wilmington City Council. Appeals should be in the form of a letter submitted to the city clerk within 10 days of this hearing. Any item that is appealed will tentatively be heard by the City Council at their July 15 meeting. At that point, let me move on. And first thing is I need approval of the minutes from last meeting. So commissioners, any inputs, additions? Commissioner Lennon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 4, third paragraph from the bottom, I just don't remember anybody saying this, and I just, if you all do, please correct me. The reference, or the says, others maintain that this shift aligns with modern best practices and trends in other North Carolina municipalities such as Charlotte, Oak Island, and Wrightsville Beach, which are either reducing or eliminating SUPs. I just don't remember anybody saying aligns with modern best practices and trends. Does anybody remember that?
Commissioner Adams.
I feel like that was coming from staff and not the commission.
That was my recollection, and in I know the reference to those municipalities was, it's a picky thing. I just don't remember that term being used in the minutes, or in the dialogue, excuse me.
I can make the adjustment to identify it as coming from staff rather than from commissioners.
And then, does that make sense? Coming from staff?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Anybody else? I need a motion to approve the minutes with that addition.
So move.
Motion from Commissioner Woodruff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Adams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes from last meeting are approved with the addition that we just discussed. If I look at tonight's agenda, I am going to take the luxury of, and this is, I find my agenda, take the luxury of moving item number 3 up, since that is a pretty quick continuance discussion, and it's not going to require a lot. So, and that is a conditional rezoning for property containing 2.1 acres located at 120 and 124 Canal Street from R20 residential to O&I CD for a general personal service use.
Thank you. Amy Schaefer here on behalf of the applicants. This is the first time this item has been on before you. We did let staff know, but unfortunately not in enough time for it to not make your agenda. We've spoken with staff. Neither of us have heard from any of the neighbors or concerned citizens on this item. So we would just ask that this be continued to the September meeting, please.
Any thoughts, comments from staff, or do I hear a motion to accept the request for continuance?
I'd like to make a motion to accept continuance of item number 3 to September meeting.
It would be to the September 10th meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Favor? Opposed? See you on September 10th.
Thank you.
With that, we will go to the item number 1, which is general rezoning, property containing 2.08 acres, plus or minus, located at 3606 Market Street from OI Office and Institutional to CS Commercial Services. Patrick is going to overview this for the commission.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. As mentioned, this is a general rezoning request for 3606 Market Street. Subject property consists of approximately 2 acres. It's currently zoned O&I, Office and Institutional. The applicant's requesting a general rezoning to CS Commercial Services. Site's located on the south side of Market Street. It's currently occupied by Nourish NC, which is a nonprofit warehouse and food distribution center. Current use of this property was approved under the prior land development code with the city as a social service use, which was then removed from the city code when it was updated in 2021 and grouped within just general office uses. Therefore, Nourish NC is currently considered a legal non-conforming use in the O&I district under the city's current land development code for that warehousing and distribution use. Any expansions to nonconformities require compliance with zoning regulations that are current at the time of the request. Here's a vicinity map showing the general vicinity surrounding the request, as well as some existing site conditions. Here are more photos of existing site conditions along Market Street and the site access. Here are photos of some adjacent properties and land uses. It's primarily surrounded by commercial uses, which include vehicle repair, sales, and wash services. There's also restaurants, hotels, and retail uses along this portion of Market Street. As mentioned, the site's currently zoned O&I, and they are requesting that general rezoning to CS Commercial Services. The site's bordered by O&I to the south and west. There is CS zoning as well, located to the north and east of the site. The Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan identifies this area as within a suburban commercial retrofit area of opportunity. It's also along a major corridor and is within an urban mixed-use center on the growth strategies map. While the plan promotes mixed-use pedestrian scale development in these areas, the CS zoning designation is intended to accommodate more intense commercial uses that are generally inconsistent with the desired development pattern of this area and that's outlined in the comprehensive plan. An unconditioned general rezoning request at this location does not adequately ensure that future development of this property is compatible with the adopted plans and the existing development pattern of the area. The proposed general rezoning would allow by right uses that would not be appropriate in this location, such as manufacturing type uses, light industrial uses, industrial laundry services, outdoor storage uses. Therefore, staff believes that the proposed zoning amendment is not consistent with the recommendations of the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and that the request is not reasonable or in the public interest, and therefore staff recommends denial. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. That concludes my presentation. The applicant's here as well with their own presentation.
Looking at the applicant's conditions about the change, item number 4 talks about how there may be addition and reuse, additional uses of the building. Would a conditional zoning that captured a lot of what's being described as potential upgrades to the building or the site as a CZ allow the current use to continue legally and facilitate this hypothetical expansion that's talked about in item 4?
Yeah, the applicant has the option to do a conditional rezoning to CS that would get it in compliance for the use type within that zoning district. Under the current zoning district, any expansion, and just in full transparency, there was a request for an expansion for this use, which triggered the rezoning request. So they were attempting to expand storage area. I believe there's a cooler as well that triggered this request that came into our department. However, yes, if they were to go to the CD route for a conditional rezoning to CS, that's one other manner in which they could come into compliance. The general rezoning, which is being requested tonight, again, as I tried to explain best I could, it opens up all the uses within the district, and we have to take into account every use that could possibly go within the CS district.
Anybody else? I'll go right, Commissioner Lennon.
Do you have this on computer? This was in our packet. The zoning.
I have a similar map that may.
So it's CS to the, what would that be?
That would be to the north and east.
To the east.
That black line is the dividing line of the zoning districts.
Okay, and then this goes out, I think, further, bigger view. So is that CS down there as well, on the other side of that O&I?
I can try and find it here in my packet real quick. I believe this is something the applicant provided, but it does look like there is maybe CS across Darlington Avenue that might be being identified, but O&I is generally located directly adjacent to the south and west of this site.
Okay, and then across Market Street, that's also CS?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
So, Patrick, let me make sure I understand it. I'll try to simplify, and correct me if I get too simple here. You have a warehouse and an office there today, and it's in a legal, what's the phrase, legally non-compliant?
Legal nonconformity, which means it was
Nonconformity.
legal
Thank
at the time of approval.
Understand. To do anything here that would closely resemble the current uses of the structure that's there, would I be correct to interpret that a general rezoning would just open up way too many uses, potential uses, as opposed to a conditional? And I'm struggling with why not a request for a conditional rezoning versus general. I suspect I want to hear the answer to that from the applicant.
Yeah, I'll defer to the
Okay.
applicant on the choice of the application. But yes, staff's concern in doing the analysis and the policy analysis was all of the other uses that are allowed in CS that are not permitted in O&I.
Got it.
That we don't believe would be appropriate with the future and desired development pattern in that area.
Or the potential of even being, yeah, I got it.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Patrick, thanks. At this point, I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. My name's Cindy Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of Nourish NC that owns the site. I appreciate Pat's, summary of it, and I acknowledge that as a conventional rezoning, the current use of the track is really not germane. But I do think that a little bit of background is important to our efforts. And as he said, this tract is currently occupied by Nourish NC. It's a nonprofit organization providing healthy food to hungry children, empowering them to succeed in the classroom and in their community. They purchased this back in 2019. They made improvements in 2021, and they've been serving the community ever since. Obviously, this location is probably fairly optimal to their mission. The building is occupied by administrative offices, a walk-in grocery, storage area for the food goods, and space to assemble the backpack program and other projects that they have going on. This is not a lot different than a grocery store like Aldi or any of the other stores. There's an area with groceries, there's some administrative office space, and obviously there is the storage area. I wanted to touch briefly on how we got here today, and Pat did briefly. This use has been this use since they purchased it and did the improvements. They were initially permitted to expand the warehouse part of the building in 2021, and as a change of use from the previous restaurants at that time, that entailed upgrades to the landscaping, both internally and along the street yard. You know, it took the entire TRC process to get their certificate of occupancy, which they got in the O&I district in March of 2022 for this specific use. It has been discussed that at that time they called it a social services. There was no definition for social services. I mean, I feel like that was sort of pulled out of the air, but that, I think that is, you know, pertinent to what we're talking about here. They recently submitted a plan to add the detached storage building, the pad for the freezer, and this is the point where the determination was made that the use is now defined as the warehousing and distribution, which is not permitted in the O&I district. But nothing in this use has changed. The petition is not attempting to insert a CS district into some incongruent location. As I believe Mr. Lennon was trying to point out, you can see that there's quite a bit of other CS zoning in this vicinity. There was the suggestion that we alter the petition to a conditional zoning, insinuating that it might be found to be more consistent, but that's questionable. The Create Wilmington Areas of Opportunity recommendation for suburban commercial retrofit suggests guidelines such as infilling surface parking, adding residential uses, connecting to adjacent parking lots. Those are none of the things that adding a site plan to this petition would suggest any greater consistency. And as an organization, without knowing what the future might hold for them, a conditional district can be limiting unless they have a crystal ball to figure out what their future may hold. Major modifications require coming back here again. That sort of thing is tough on coordination and costs for a nonprofit. We also tried unsuccessfully to have the use defined as general retail, like as a grocery store, which we believe that is what the use is. That could have led to us petitioning for a CB, a community business, rather than the CS. Unfortunately, that was just not the determination of the zoning administrator. So what I did, the bugaboo in the room, is what can be permitted at the site if the organization moves or if these existing improvements got wiped away in a CS district. Right now, this use is considered warehouse and distribution. We fit in this category. There are some conditions pertaining to what can be stored and that the storage is prohibited exterior to the building, no problem. It is all in compliance with those criteria. I went through the entire use table. I eliminated all the uses that are already allowed in the O&I and the CS, and this is what we have left. I've struck the obviously unrealistic ones. The ones in black have prescribed conditions which offer controls over those activities. The uses in red are what would be permitted by right. If you're familiar with this part of town and this stretch of Market Street, I think you'd have to admit that many of these uses are already in this vicinity. Although the comprehensive plan is focused on planned obsolescence and replacing older uses with fairly recent improvements, this improvement, if I go back to the site plan where it showed the permission for a warehouse back in 2021, they've already spent almost $1.5 million on this improvement. So I feel like that investment is a fairly good bit of stability for the subject site for whatever use would be there. The point we're trying to justify in this rezoning is that ultimately, if the organization were to cease or move, there are already regulations in place in the Land Development Code to guide future development or future reuse of this building and property. The change of use regulation is in place to enforce updating to more current code provisions if that new use were one of those list of things, and assuring that the community is protected in future development of the tract. If any new use or totally new development were to occur on this tract, the Market Street frontage standards would come up, the other supplemental landscaping. There are provisions if it was totally a brand-new design, that they knocked everything down. The consistency chart acknowledges that little bit of split support based on the fact that the site is already developed and is not counterproductive to transitional character and the aesthetics of this vicinity. Each of the modest non-support policies really reference new development, a vacant site. We understand that staff's doing their job. They're assessing it with for the possible lack of consistency, but I believe that that's if this were a vacant CS site. It's not vacant, it's nicely developed. We just ask that you don't penalize the organization, which is certainly valuable to the community and very appropriately located, for getting caught up in interpretive changes to the code when this request is in the public interest. And I'd be happy to answer your questions.
So we have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Kofer?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Wolf, would you help us understand, I think your position would be that this use should fall in the category of general retail.
But that's neither here nor there. That would be a different board I'd be in front of.
Well, just to entertain me for a moment, which one of the three sections of general retail would it be? The large, medium, or small?
Medium. This is over 10,000, but much less than the 40, I believe. I don't have the exact.
And I understand that it may fall to a different board if that were the pursuit, but just again to entertain me. So with,
I guess if we argued the zoning administrator's definition, but then we'd be back here with a CB instead of a CS, it would just be a little more palatable perhaps to staff.
but just to understand the use a little bit further, so the image that we have up here right now, the front piece that almost looks like there's solar panels on top, that bifurcation, is that really the walk-in grocery section?
Yes.
That's what we're seeing
And
there.
the offices then off to the left of this photograph.
So, forgive me, I've donated to Nourish NC, but have never walked in that establishment. So can you, as a consumer off the street, walk in to there and shop?
Yes, during the day. I'm not exactly positive how they qualify the shoppers, but yes, there is daily walk-in shopping. There are opportunities on weekends when the volunteers come in and they use the larger part of the building where the things are stored to fill backpacks, to fill boxes.
Excuse me, is your question, could you walk in and do shopping? Is that really your question, or?
Or just, yeah, anyone, any
Yeah.
citizen, any
Okay.
person would just walk in and, yeah.
Yes, I mean, you can just walk in. As to the cost of it, I'm not, and I apologize, I'm not positive exactly how that works with your situation.
But it's open to the public.
Monetary situation.
Open to the public, so to
Yes.
speak. It's not closed off like you would foresee a warehouse that's private boxing.
That's
And then the
correct.
rear of what we are seeing, sort of the orientation would be south. That's more warehousing, storage. Like if we were in a big box grocery store, that's be behind the closed doors piece. Okay.
That's correct.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Lennon, Commissioner Woodruff, Commissioner Jones.
So I'm sorry, walk me through the timeline. They acquired this in 19,
Yes,
and there was an existing building which they renovated and expanded in 21. And so now they're coming to do this in 25. I mean, they still have ample acreage for, well, I shouldn't say ample, but
there'd certainly be the possibility. I don't believe that this is the type of parking lot that gets filled up on a regular basis other than by volunteers. They have the food pharmacy, they have the mobile truck that does groceries out in the community, and then they have here where you can walk in or the volunteers prepare for deliveries.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, would you mind going back to that aerial? So, looking at this picture to the left, is that a hotel or motel?
To the left is a motel, to the right is a used car dealership, to the far right is an automotive, fairly new, with really a retail, sort of window center type of facade.
So it's a
They've
car-
done a nice job with it, but it is
It's a car
automobile
lot.
vehicle repair, yes.
Okay. And that's CS, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then across the street
Whoops.
is also CS.
It is, and that is, there is a ethnic restaurant, there is a lighting supply company, I believe. There's a sort of like a Ivy Cottage where you sell consignment type of things. It's a variety of businesses, absolutely.
And what's behind it, down at the bottom?
That is the Corps of Engineers office building.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Adams?
I want to dive in a little bit more about what I think Ace was trying to get more information on. And Cindy, you may not know the answer to this, so staff might have to address it. I mean, retail is allowed in O&I, correct? Retail's not allowed in O&I? Okay.
That was just an opportunity that I could have come down away from the CS to a CB if
Okay.
it was defined as retail.
Okay, that's what threw me off, so. All right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Collier? You go ahead. Okay, Commissioner Gofer?
Ben, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wolf, can we go back just one more time to it looked like maybe almost like a survey with the red circles? Is that, so the only expansion is what we're seeing circled here?
What is on the right side of the slide is the 2025. They went to TRC requesting this storage building and a new pad, and that's when it came up that, what is this use? And it was no longer social services, and social services didn't have a definition prior, so they had to put it in a use box, and that became warehouse and distribution.
And what triggered this conversation and you in front of this commission is those two items that are circled in red, a new walk-in freezer and a new storage building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Collier?
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wolf, so bought the property initially, which was the China Buffet, is that right?
It was that, there was a saloon in the back, it was Ryan's Steakhouse originally, but yes,
Originally, okay.
generally restaurants oriented.
So up on the screen, the 2021 expansion is the original layout when they bought it in 19, right?
Yes,
And then, in
They
21,
updated.
they added finished the warehouse in the back and brought the building to the design it is today.
that's correct.
And they did all of the street yards, connecting sidewalks, really taking it up to what we consider the more current standards of design in the city's
That's what it
practices, correct?
appears. I was varying back and forth between the 2016 aerial and this one, and there was quite a bit of extra landscaping in the back. Parking's changed. They eliminated a row of parking in the front so that that street yard could be expanded.
Right. I mean, you can look at the properties on either side and tell that they've gone into the newer code, as long as you work in the code enough. So they have brought this up to the new standards, the 21 standards. Now, what I think the whole thing becomes, you lost a use word, right? The social services
That's
went
correct.
away, and now we're discussing whether all of the CS options are appropriate in general terms for this one piece of property. Is that the way you see it?
That's the
And whether you go to CB, CS, any of those, there's going to be some noxious portion in there that someone may not like.
I would imagine.
Okay. But we are, I think as has been pointed out, we are nearly surrounded by CS, and we are right on Market Street in the area that you would want CS, understanding the staff and the 2016's comp plan of what the redevelopment could be. To me, they've redeveloped this and made this into a piece of property already that is that is viable and it meets needs. Now we're talking use. I don't know, the warehouse thing is, the site itself and the project doesn't bother me. I understand why there may be a concern of going to a CZ zoning category to limit or to pare down the list of uses that could come above later on. You know, I read through all the uses that CS allows by right and with conditions and that other letter that we won't even bring up. But I think that, I don't know of any of the ones that are in there that are that onerous. I do understand some of the heavy machinery, and I think there was one other one that Pat brought up, the laundry service, the industrial laundry services, those kinds of things. I can see that. I just don't know that they're going to fall in these locations. Anyways, thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that I at least brought it out that this property has been redeveloped from an old site into the newer standards. Plus, now it looks like it has some stormwater controls that it did not have before. So, thank you.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm embarrassed to ask this, but is this a local nonprofit only, or is this a larger North Carolina?
I think it's well, that I don't know.
Okay.
Obviously, it's Nourish NC, so I don't know whether there are other ones in other towns or not. I apologize. I don't think Mr. McCrossan realized he should be here earlier when he was talking to an attorney. I guess he said, oh, no, you don't have to come.
Okay.
So I apologize. I'll try to be better versed in the organization.
Thanks.
Cindy, here's where I'm conflicted. We've got so let me state it and then tell me why I shouldn't be. On one hand, we have a request for a general, for general rezoning, which the interpretation from the staff clearly points out that would open up the possibility of a whole lot of different usages that, based on the zoning that you're proposing, would open up a whole lot of uses that just wouldn't necessarily be conducive to the area. Now, one can argue the probability of those uses ever coming into fruition, and that's another discussion. Help me understand, because you've alluded to this a couple times now, as you've talked about the I'll call it the disagreement of, what the usage is defined at, what the zoning administrator has defined at. Trying to get to where you're trying to get to, which is to make this happen for your client, would a conditional zoning have been a lesser path of resistance to go through?
It might have been, but it just entailed, you have to have the meeting, you have to have, and that's certainly timing and what they can do. But it also then hamstrings you for the future of more buildings in the future, something like that. They'd be back here again. Not that that is a feasible thing. But as far as the reasoning that it's not consistent with the comprehensive land use plan, they're right. Putting this here doesn't match the strategies or what the comprehensive land use plan is suggesting for this area of opportunity. But that being said, I think my personal belief, and obviously it's 8 years old now or whatever, is suburban retrofit it's applied to the Walmart or the Kmart that is sitting there idly with all that pavement and everything. This small site along Market Street wouldn't necessarily redevelop as it is with everything around it as mixed use or interconnected parking lots or some of the things that they talk about in the strategies and policies of the suburban commercial retrofit. So, consistency, no. My point is that as far as support for the CS, the fact that it's an already improved site diminishes the impacts of any of those other uses if they were to leave this site and those uses might come in. And as you said, several of those other uses probably could have been struck through. they would never be at this site because of whether it be marketing or appropriateness or the size of the site for building materials, those types of things. So that was the approach. I mean, yes, we're bucking the grade, but this was a straightforward effort for a nonprofit organization.
And I asked the question trying to divorce myself from who the group is, because they do great work. There's no two ways about it. But I'm trying to, look at the land use code that we have to deal with, all of us. And that's the lens I'm looking at. And yes, I would agree with you that in a lot of those other CS uses, the probability of, nightclub or a truck stop, I get it, but I never say never. I mean, we see a lot of interesting things going on in the development and zoning world today, and I'm sure we will in the future. So, and the last thing is just a comment. Patrick, keep me honest here, but was it social services went away with the 2021?
But was this ever social services?
I don't know. I mean, but it is.
But that's neither here nor there.
It's right. It is what it is, and that's what we have to deal with. So, okay, thanks for clearing. Commissioner Collier.
Pat, may I ask you one question, please? With a CZ zoning, would the site plan would it be a site-specific plan, or could they come back with just the condition on uses? Can the CZ zoning only cover the use and not necessarily bind them to a site plan? I think that's what Cindy's talking about with numbers of buildings, if you had to come back in and ask for any change.
Right, yeah, so if they came back in with a conditional district rezoning, it would be tied to a site plan. Of course, we would be happy to work with the applicant to maybe try and develop a plan that allowed for some future expansion that they may be anticipating. That's a possibility that we'd be happy to explore with the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, Cindy, thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to open up the public hearing. And again, the rules of the road, just to make sure everybody's clear. It's 10 minutes for anybody that is speaking in favor, and 10 minutes, speaking against. So with that, let me open up to anyone wishing to speak on this application in favor. Yeah, Dave, I'm not seeing anybody behind you either. So having said that, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, then the only thing I would do is, okay, then I think I'm going to close the public hearing and then deliberation amongst the council. Amongst the commission, what is thoughts, comments? Go ahead, Commissioner Kofer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll jump in on this one because it's on the heels of that last meeting where we spoke so much about use. And in my opinion, I respectfully disagree with the zoning administrator's decision. I think there's probably a lot of discretion there. I think Ms. Wolf did a great job of explaining how this site has been developed. It's been developed. It's a modern developed site that is sort of caught in the crosshairs between a textual interpretation. It's really syntax that we're discussing, in my opinion, a table of uses where when they were built, the word social services existed, and today that word doesn't exist. And so the idea that this is defined very statically as a warehouse, I don't see that particularly. It's a hybrid use, and there's a grocery component that could fit into retail, which makes some sense. So I feel like this could have been handled at an administrative level. I don't know if it even triggers a rezoning, but we don't have those tools in our toolbox, perhaps as a city, to allow that, because the words of their use just isn't there. So there's this practical component, and then there's this philosophical component. The philosophical side to me is the hypothetical of the future land use plan, that this doesn't fit, and I understand why staff would have to recommend denial. But for me, on the practical side, I would vote for this. If this is the only angle, the only avenue for this applicant to achieve what they're trying to achieve, which is really simply adding a storage building and a outdoor freezer. So again, I would be in favor of this one.
I agree with Commissioner Kofer, and I've said many times, I think there are places that a general rezoning, a straight rezoning can work. I understand if this area were redeveloped in the tone of the comp plan, you know, there may be a different scenario, but there has none of it been redeveloped, but this site has redeveloped itself and brought itself up to current 2021 standards at least. So I agree with Commissioner Kofer. I'm in favor of this particular general rezoning because I believe that it's a use that has been, we are now bringing it from non-conforming to conforming by adjusting the zoning code or the zoning designation.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Adams?
I hate going against my own grain, which in this case is conditional or unconditional zonings, general zonings. Generally not a fan, and I generally don't like to buck staff's recommendations. But again, I think these guys just got stuck in a code cycle change, and through no fault of their own, they found themselves in this situation. For me, the user matters also. I know that there is the potential for something different in the future, but it's noble what these guys are doing, and I think this is a project I can support also.
Commissioner Lennon, anything?
You guys stole all my good lines.
Woodruff?
Well, no, I think, just kidding. Mr. Chair, you said a second ago, which I thought was really good, divorcing yourself from the user. And Commissioner Adams, I agree with you that I'd be heartless if I didn't admit that the user here did have an impact in this. But for me, on a general rezoning, in my, 5 years on here, has been, where is it? And so I used the general rezoning request for high-density multifamily that we got right beside Creekwood for a potential tax credit deal, but the applicant was trying to do a straight rezone. We were like, absolutely not, because you could end up with 300 and something apartments jammed into a very small area. This one, as you probably saw by my leading questions, is surrounded by CS already. It's immediately adjacent to it. It's on Market Street, and I think that for me is so take the user out of it, that for me speaks volumes, number one. Number two, on a conditional district, I'm not like a lot of people. Those trouble me, and I go back to the two examples y'all are tired of me giving you where, so this business has bought the property, improved it, and is improving it again, all within 6 years, 5.5, 6 years. It's very probable if they continue on this trend that they're gonna grow again. So if they were to do a CD and have to come back in here and go through all of this again, just to add another cooler pad out back, that doesn't seem right to me. So I too would be in favor of this.
Mr. Woodruff?
I agree. The poor applicant is caught and has gotten caught through no fault of their own. They've done magnificent work to develop what they've developed. I would not have any concerns with all the potential uses for that piece of property. I mean, we all know what Market Street is along there. This is the finest piece of thing going on right there in that section. And I think if there's any changes that are going to take place, it's going to be some of these ones that are around it that are already in CS anyway. And so I'm wholly in favor of passing this.
Commissioner Jones?
I agree with everybody. You know, I have a nonprofit, and I appreciate the work that Cindy does, and, you know, I know what Nourish NC does, but it's not just them that get caught up in our regulations. It's people that are trying to do residential. But a nonprofit to come in front of this board and have the time, and, you know, she, I know what Nourish NC does, but it's not just them that get caught up in our regulations. It's people that are trying to do residential. But a nonprofit to come in front of this board and have the time, and, you know, she, I know what Nourish NC does, but it's not just them that get caught up in our regulations. It's people that are trying to do residential. But a nonprofit to come in front of this board and And if you were having to go through the regular processes of meeting with us a couple times, or then the city, it adds up. And I agree, I was here when it was Ryan's. I think this use is very central for the needs of our area, and, you know, I'm good with it. Yeah.
My thoughts are this. I agree with Commissioner Adams. I mean, it's very seldom do we want to, go against the recommendations of staff. But this is one of those things where I think, as I've heard from every one of my peers, is actually calls for us to, exercise a little element of discretion as to, how we got here and where the applicant is trying to go. So, and I think I've heard the will of the commission. So at this point, I just need a motion to move on. Commissioner Lennon.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of agenda item number 1, the request for 3606 Market Street to be rezoned from O&I Office and Institutional to CS Commercial Services. This request is consistent with the objectives and policies of the following plans adopted by the City of Wilmington, the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan, and the Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable and in the public interest as the proposal allows for appropriate commercial development along a major corridor. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends approval of this request.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Collier, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Applicant, congratulations, move on. Okay. Item number 2, another general rezoning. Property containing .81 acres plus or minus, located at 3816 Market Street from O&I to CB. And Hillary Taylor will outline this for the commission.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. This public hearing, number 2, general rezoning located at 3816 Market Street. The subject property consists of approximately 0.81 acres or 35,300 square feet and is zoned O&I Office and Institutional District. The site is located on Market Street between Darlington Avenue and Switchyard Lane and is currently occupied by a parking lot serving the adjacent property. This map shows the general vicinity surrounding the request and images of the public site, images of the subject site. And these are photos of the existing conditions around the subject site, looking north across Market Street, looking south from Market Street through the site, and looking east on Market Street, as well as west along Market Street. And these are photos of the adjacent properties and land uses. There's an automobile care center and restaurant located north of the site, an automobile parts store located to the west, church and healthcare offices located northeast of the site, and a construction company office located to the east. As mentioned, the site is currently zoned O&I Office and Institutional. The site is surrounded by CS and O&I to the north across Market Street, CS to the west across the rail right-of-way, O&I to the east bordering the site, and MD-17 to the south across the rail right-of-way. The subject property is located along a major corridor, Regional Parkway, and Conceptual Green connection on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies maps. The comprehensive plan promotes compatible commercial development and uses along the major corridors, as well as appropriate transitions between commercial areas and nearby residential neighborhoods. Rezoning from O&I to CB would allow for pedestrian-scale office, retail, and personal service uses, allowing an appropriate transition between the commercial uses on Market Street and nearby multi-dwelling residential complexes. Staff believes that the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the recommendations of the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and that the request is reasonable and in the public's interest. Staff therefore recommends approval. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is here as well.
Any questions of the staff? I only have one question, and it's probably for the applicant, is this looks like a similar piece of land that we have dealt with in the past couple of years. He's nodding yes, so we'll let the applicant address that, so. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. At this point, we will ask the applicant to come forth.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Dave Spatrino, 18 Palmetto Drive, Wrightsville Beach. It's been 11 months since we last met. You should know that I really am not excited about coming here, except the fact that the room is completely empty, which is the only thing that I have going for me at this point. This site is the final phase of a 3-acre parcel, which was also adjacent to a 10-acre parcel that we have been kind of dealing with in the last 6 years. The church is complete and is being moved into or occupied this summer. The fellowship hall had been a major restoration. And while this site is a general district rezoning, I bring to you, and I know that you can't include it, but you should understand what I'm working on here for this site and why O&I was inappropriate, and upon staff discussion as to our options, CB was the most logical. I'll go to the next. This is a design that features a couple of things. It picks up some of the architecture from the existing Pearsall Church that was built in 1912, but it's modeled after, I'm a big fan of plagiarizing good product, 33 North in Mount Pleasant across from their new Costco. I took their architectural details and tried to create a design that was compatible. The site is triangular in shape. The parking lot was put in with the intent of future development on this piece. So the parking lot already accommodates and already is constructed. It's pervious pavers, a very impressive installation that also helps with our environmental management of water. And then the site addresses both the parking lot and Market Street with its back along the spine of the railroad track. The elevations are pretty much a shopping center. This is intended to be neighborhood services as we see Wilmington, especially Market Street, get away from the traditional Euclidean zoning, the mix of uses, just like we just discussed. Market Street is our next great street to be redeveloped, so we're going to start seeing, especially areas like this, where there will be an investment as people start to thicken up in our community. What follows the apartments will be places that people aren't afraid to shop or people afraid to visit. Again, that connection of Market Street is really haphazard. It really doesn't have an identity. We're trying to stake our claim by tagging on to both the church, the fellowship hall, and then the surrounding development. And then a couple of renderings on the site where we can preserve the existing trees. They're not that exciting. They're loblolly pines, but nonetheless, they are trees. And again, you can see how we are addressing here. Again, I know it's not a conditional district rezoning, but I wanted you to be able to see that we've put time, effort, and attention into what can happen on this site, as well as the potential users that would not be allowed on this site if it were to remain O&I. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant? Well, that's, okay, Commissioner Adams.
Dave, given the amount of detail and work and thought in the architecture and the site plan, what caused you to not think of this as a conditional district?
CD is for the weak. CD is a painful, awful, horrible, inappropriate application for something as simple as this. I hate CD. I will only bring you CD when I have no other choice. If you don't like it for general rezoning, my argument then is leave it alone and we'll find some other use. But a CD is so painful. As I'm speaking to you and still in TRC on my last CD, I can't stand CD unless I have no other option. I'm sorry, was that, I don't know if I went off for a second. I felt like Will Ferrell there and back to
What
school.
you hate about CD now?
I do not like CD. Again, the point of the matter is, what if I got to this site, I am here and I see an opportunity to make it just a little bit better by making an adjustment. But if it's too much better, that I've got to go back to Pat, and Pat goes, Dave, you know, I'm with you, man. This is a good idea. What you're proposing to modify is actually so much better than what you presented. You had time to think about it. You're crushing here, Dave. I got bad news for you, dude. It's CD. So I have two options. I can leave it alone and give you something subpar because it's already approved, or I can spend 6 months and thousands of dollars to come back and make that adjustment. So in this instance, in this specific instance, I will roll the dice. But I'm telling you, on another CD project I have right now, I am making really illogical decisions because I don't want to come back and see you. And that's just why I don't like CD. You don't get the best of me on CD. You get what I think I can get past. I'm sorry, was that, anyone want to ask me more about CD?
Heard all I needed to hear.
You just got to be more specific next time. Anybody else? Commissioner Lennon?
I just said two quick things. So the rail track is right there adjacent to the site.
Yeah, we are right on the property.
And then the second thing, and just so I understand, could you go back to the site plan for a second? There was a parking lot referenced that is currently being used, is that?
Well, the parking lot is, the property line, actually, I don't know if I have it on here, on staff's report, the property line goes right down the middle of the parking lot. So if you look at where the PBC offices are, the fellowship hall, there's, in round math, 25 parking spaces on the right, and there's 25 on the left. So we've installed all the parking for the site, and we've installed the turn lane. So at this point, the turn lane is in, the parking lot is in, we just don't have a building yet.
Okay, so
The infrastructure is complete.
so constructing that building has already been contemplated to a certain extent with the parking?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was it. Thanks.
And we've done the parking, just for future reference, in an attempt to minimize the amount of parking needed to share with the church. The church needs the parking on Wednesday nights, and it needs the parking on on Sundays. This location, the office building that's there now, they're Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So nobody's there on Wednesday nights, and nobody's ever there on the weekends. So the entire design was based upon who the users are now, and then who they're likely to be in the future, so that we're not putting more parking in than we need to.
So the church still owns the site next door?
The church owns the property, it's not shown on this map, but 2 doors down. So the subject parcel, there's what we've been referring to as the fellowship hall, which is currently construction offices.
That's the
That
new
was
one?
built, that was a Leslie Boney design from the 1970s. And then the OG original church, which was purchased by Hope Church, and McKinley is currently renovating that church for those parishioners, and then they'll have their parking behind the building. But the design initially, just for clarification, is we have a shared parking lot, so there's a crossover easements and agreements so that the maintenance is shared as well as the landscaping is shared, but also so that the church nor anyone had to build more parking than they needed.
Dave, the picture, if you flash back to the one where you actually had that is nothing more than this is what could be here.
Correct.
That's all that is.
This may not be here. You don't get to, this.
That's why I just want to be very clear about what we're looking at.
Yeah, but I know that you can't consider it, but to Mr. Commissioner Adams' point, it's not like I'm just kind of, you need to vote on this as if somebody goes in here and does something that's only allowed in CB. What is designed here, though, is very specific to our vision as to what would be appropriate, would add value to the streetscape, would add value to the community, and would also be an attractive replacement for the, at this point, very tired, exhausted buildings that are surrounding the area. They're metal buildings with 8-foot ceilings, with drop ceilings. They're not the next generation of development that we're going to be expected to present here in Wilmington as we continue to thicken up and grow as a community.
Okay. Anybody else for the applicant? Dave, thank you.
And thank you for allowing me to vent a little bit about conditional district uses. I'll be in the back afterwards if you want to talk more about it.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
At this point, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Same ground rules apply. Everybody knows what they are. So is there anybody here wishing to speak in favor? Anybody here wishing to speak against? Seeing neither, I'm going to close the public hearing. And what are the wishes of the commission? Okay, Commissioner Cofer.
I'll lead off again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say that the big delta between this particular agenda item, and the last one we just heard was the acronyms, the CB, Charlie Bravo versus the CS, where the CS, the staff's denial, seemed to be based on the impact of the services allowed in those uses, manufacturing, industrial, laundry, things like that. Whereas CB is a little bit sweeter fit for the comp plan and the illustration that the applicant provided, which I know is not exactly what may be proposed there, but backing up to the railroad and trying to fit as much commercial density for goods and services in that area seems like a win for this city. So I certainly would be in favor of this one.
Go ahead.
I agree. I think the cases are very similar in terms of would you consider them to be a general rezoning? I think this, regardless of Mr. Petrino's plans, I think the use or the zoning classification he is asking for is appropriate in this area. We're talking about a very irregular shaped piece of property. There's only a few buildings that are going to fit there to begin with. It is evident that there has been planning for this down the line. So I would be in favor of this particular one, general rezoning as well.
Commissioner Adams, anything? No? Commissioner Lennon? No. Commissioner Woodruff? Commissioner Jones? Okay, then I need a motion to approve or reject. Do I have somebody to make that motion?
I'll do it.
Commissioner Collier.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve Agenda Item 2 at 3816 Market Street to be rezoned from O&I Office and Institutional District to CB Community Business District. We believe that this request is consistent with the objectives and the policies of the following plans, specifically the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission considers its approval to be reasonable and in the public interest because the proposed zoning allows for compatible uses that are consistent with the surrounding area. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends its approval of this request.
I have a motion by Commissioner Collier. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
That doesn't mean that we agree with Dave on all of his CD comments, but we heard you. Understood.
We will require Dave to come back and present his. So, okay.
Hate leads to suffering, Dave. Hate leads to suffering.
Going on to item number 4, street closure, the closure of Aubrey Alley between Parsley Street and Davis Street, approximately 330 feet in length, consisting of 0.23 acres. Linda Painter, our planning director, will brief the commission.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. As the chairman stated, this is a request for a street closure for Aubrey Alley, or a portion of Aubrey Alley, I should say, between Davis and Parsley Streets. All right. On the slide before you, you'll see an aerial photograph with the portion of Aubrey Alley that we are proposing to close, outlined in green. As you can see, it currently connects to Parsley Street to the northeast, and the right-of-way itself actually does connect all the way down to Davis Street, and which is at the intersection of North 3rd. We are not proposing or requesting to close the entire portion of the alley, so we are proposing to maintain that section that runs along North 3rd Street as it runs into MLK for future right-of-way purposes. This aerial shows a little bit more context in terms of the location of the site. And I apologize, I'm having issues with this tonight. These photos show existing conditions. Looking through the site, you can see this is an unimproved alleyway, so it's an unimproved right-of-way, is not currently used for any type of connection. And this is the land use and zoning map. The 2 parcels that are located to the northwest and southeast are currently vacant. There is 1 parcel with commercial use located at the corner of Parsley Street and North 4th Street. This is a survey of the area proposed to be closed. Again, as you can see, that portion to the southwest is proposed to remain as public right-of-way. The Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan identifies specific policies related to transportation, and in particular the closure of streets. And when we are considering closure of streets, the first thing we look at is the city's existing street network and the impact it will have, as well as impacts on future connectivity. In this particular case, we do not believe there will be any impacts on future connectivity just because of the way that alley intersects with Davis Street and North 3rd. There really is no potential for that connection to be made given that major thoroughfare that it would be tying into. Therefore, in reviewing the application, staff finds the following. The unimproved alley is not considered a viable street connection. Future connectivity and circulation within the public road network would not be impacted by closure of this portion of the right-of-way, and we believe it's consistent with the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So here's my question, because I don't have a consistency sheet in my package, so.
I apologize. Oh.
I didn't hear.
We do not do consistency statements for street closures.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Okay, so, again, so the city is the applicant.
The city is the applicant, yes.
Okay. So I guess then I don't have any other questions. Commissioner Adams?
I'm curious what precipitated this request, because I doubt people were sitting around and planning, looking for orphaned right-of-ways that really should just go away.
I'm going to have to answer that by saying we were requested by the city attorney's office to process this, and I do not have a background other than I believe it's associated with city property that we are in the process of trying to dispose of.
That's correct. The city has parcels that adjoin this alleyway that the city is making an effort to deal with their surplus properties. So this is an area.
This is what this is. Okay.
Is this where the containers are starting to appear?
I'm not, oh, no. You're talking about I'm going.
Near Taylor Homes?
Chowtown, thank you.
Okay.
No, that is.
No.
No, that's okay.
On the other side of Cowan Street from this
Okay,
site.
thank you.
Commissioner Collier?
So the adjacent parcels, am I to understand the city owns both adjacent parcels? So you're not really giving up land, we're just blending it into two other parcels?
We
Or is that
own
wrong?
one of the adjacent parcels, so some portion of this will come to will attach to the piece of property the city owns. There are actually two other parcels that are to the southeast of the right-of-way that are separately owned, and the right-of-way they will receive portions of the right-of-way as well.
So does the city own 202 Parsley Street or 1125 4th or all those other numbers Cowan?
Sorry, I'm going to.
202 Parsley Street for sure.
Pat, do we have
Okay.
anything with addresses on it? And I apologize. Brian actually did this review, but he is on vacation, so I am filling in for him, so.
I'm okay with getting rid of the right-of-way. I'd heard the city owned the property, so I was just trying to determine if it's
Yeah, we
more
own
land to
that,
sell or.
Pat's going to pull something up, but we own that large parcel that is to the northeast of the right-of-way, or northwest, rather.
Northwest, okay.
Okay. So we're going to wait a minute while he pulls it up just to.
This where the 1898 memorial is?
That, Mike?
Is it that intersection?
I do.
That's to the south. That is to the south across the right.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. That's to the south of this property. It's across the other right-of-way. It's not located on this property.
It's across the street, right?
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of all the questions you,
I might not have answers to. Thank you.
how wide is this?
It's 30 feet.
30 feet, okay. And it ties on to 3rd Street, which is a city street, right?
It ties technically into Davis, but it's right, it's
right there.
It's
At the
right
point.
there in that kind of
Yeah.
curvature. So it's literally, and that's one of the reasons that when we looked at this, said this is this is not a viable street connection because there's no way DOT actually, I believe in that area, that is a DOT. Third Street is city south of that intersection. So I think intersection of Cowan. So this is, I believe, a DOT right-of-way, not something that you're going to see an alley tying in here when you already have kind of two streets coming together.
But you're going to, the city is going to maintain right-of-way between that curb and some distance?
Correct. We are not recommending closure of the entire portion, understanding that if there were any future improvements to Third Street, that right-of-way would be needed. So we are recommending retaining that.
Okay, thanks. Great job, by the way.
I apologize. I don't have anything right now with an address on it, but
Brian gave me
you can
notes.
see my pointer. The city owns this property here.
Yeah.
And then the 1898 Memorial is located down here off screen. And this site right here is the Chowtown food truck location.
Commissioner
Just to give some
Jones,
context.
were you asking about the 1898 Memorial or the museum? Because I know
The
there were-
memorial, I think it's across, I think it's like.
The
you said,
existing
south of
memorial.
there. What I'm seeing is there's two parcels owned by the Motts that are in the middle of this. The city surrounds it.
where the two buildings are. So our building,
Yes, these two.
those
so
are
maybe
owned
those two?
separately. The city owns that parcel that wraps around those and it abuts that northwestern portion of the
288
alley.
Parsley is one of their addresses, and 206 and 28.
If it helps, in your packet, as attachment 1, if you look at the 6th page, there is a depiction of the alley and the surrounding properties, so you can kind of see what's around it. Parcel number 1 on that page
see
is
the
the
parcels
city-owned property.
And Pat, thank you for pulling up the survey because you are correct, Commissioner Collier, that's 202 Parsley is the city property.
I just saw it on the survey. It's the only reason I knew the address.
We try and regain control of this discussion.
Okay.
You're good?
Yeah.
Commissioner Collier? You good? Commissioner Lennon?
So, broken record, but y'all know I hate these primarily because the city can't be compensated for them, and each adjacent property owner gets one. But hypothetically, should the city sell this property in conjunction with the neighboring asset, I sure hope the purchase price reflects this additional square footage that's a gift from heaven. Just a
I will
request.
pass that along to our
Thank you.
Economic Development Director.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Okay. I will open the public hearing, seeing as there's no one here. Then I will just enter into the record, there's no one here to speak in opposition or in support, so I'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion for agenda item number 4's approval, which is case number SC-4-625, which is a street closure of petition to close Aubrey Alley, an unimproved right-of-way between Parsley Street and Davis Street, 264 linear feet, and it's 0.18 acres. My motion is for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Collier. I have a second by Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. That closes the regular agenda. Let's go to items. Actually, let's do this a little bit out of order. Let's go to the items from the staff because of the Planning Commission rules procedures. Let's do that first before we do the normal commission and staff items.
I'm going to try and be brief with this. As you know, you have rules of procedure that were adopted several years ago, and I believe a few months ago, questions came up in terms of applicants needing to attend to request continuance and withdrawal. So as a result of that, staff working with the city attorney's office went through the rules of procedure and tried to identify some clarifications that we thought were needed. The first one that you'll see on the screen is simply a clarification. Currently, Section 3B requires that all matters requiring a legislative hearing be filed within a certain period of time. When staff looked at this, we realized that there are certain things that require legislative hearings by statute, but that are not necessarily under the commission's purview, such as annexations. And just to be clear as to what applications these filing requirements refer to, we clarified it and added and specifically said it would apply to comprehensive and land use plans and associated amendments and permanent street closures. So that there are other items that the council may be hearing by legislative hearings, such as an annexation, but those are not coming before you. The filing requirements don't apply. The next section deals with conduct of meetings. In Section E, the first recommendation would be to eliminate the provision that allows the commission by majority vote to suspend the time limitations. I think all of you have been on the commission long enough to realize when someone goes over time, I don't think you've ever taken a vote to say, yes, you can continue on. So what we have done is propose to essentially change it to how it has been working, which is allowing the presiding officer to grant a single extension of time. Additional extensions could then be granted by majority vote with the commission. So if the chair were to grant a 5-minute extension to an applicant, to proponents, to opponents, and that 5 minutes expires, there's more commentary, the commission could then vote by majority vote to say, yes, we want to extend the time period, or no.
So then to that point, we need to change the public hearing piece of the preamble that I read every month.
If this is ultimately approved, we would change that to note how that process would work.
So what we would do is, authorize the presiding officer to grant, okay. Yep, okay.
The next section deals with commission action, and there are a couple of things we're recommending that we clarify here. One, that there is no commission action that is needed on applications that are withdrawn by the applicant prior to public notice of the hearing. So if we have not advertised something and an applicant lets us know that they're withdrawing an application, it's not coming to you. It will not appear on an agenda. You will not see a withdrawal. You will have no action. For continuance, it does clarify that commission action to continue an item is only required for applications when we, again, have advertised a public hearing. If an applicant notifies us prior to that advertisement being placed that it's being continued, it will not show up on your agenda. You will not see an applicant come in to request a continuance. We will just handle that administratively. We are retaining the requirement that the applicant, if an item has been advertised, such as you saw earlier this evening, that the applicant be present and show good cause for why they are asking for that item to be continued.
Do those continuance and withdrawal, both of those require a vote?
So the continuance, yes. The withdrawal, the withdrawal, again, it won't even show up on your agenda if it hasn't been advertised. And that's actually a good segue to the next slide. Because one of the provisions that's in here, as it's drafted, it would maintain a requirement that applicants be present to request withdrawal for applications that are withdrawn after the hearing has been publicly noticed. Since staff met with the chair and vice chair on this, we've had additional discussions and wanted to bring this up for reconsideration because once an application has been withdrawn, so if I'm an applicant and I decide the day before the meeting, I'm not taking this forward, I'm withdrawing the application, there is literally nothing for you as the commission to act on. The application no longer exists, they have withdrawn it. Yes, it has been advertised, and our recommendation would be that just to have staff notify you, the application has been withdrawn, there is no action that is needed. And the other concern we have with requiring an applicant to come in is there's no enforcement of that. So if an applicant says, Pat, I'm sorry, we've decided not to take this application forward, we will not be at the meeting tomorrow night, and Pat says, oh, I'm sorry, the rules of procedure say you need to attend this meeting, there's nothing we can do. We can't force them to come in here. There's no power that you have as a commission. There's no action you can take. You can't say, well, we're going to go forward with this application because it doesn't exist anymore.
Can I?
But wait, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Livia.
I've been involved in 2 controversial projects where the applicant, and the planning board at that time, it irritated them to no end because they had a crowd out there of 40 people sitting and no applicant here to address, just to say why they were continuing. I know it may not be a rule or requirement, but to me, it's polite for us not to have to know why they're continuing it, it's to have somebody speak on their behalf if it's needed.
That's fine for continuance, but
Withdrawals.
she's talking about a withdrawal right now.
I'm talking about withdrawal. Continuance,
Oh,
they still
sorry.
have to come
Okay,
in.
okay.
Yeah, continuance, they would still have, if it has been advertised and they would like to continue it, just like you saw Amy come in earlier this evening, these rules will continue to require that the applicant show up. And in that case, you still have a live application, and it's in the applicant's best interest to say, yes, I'm going to come in, because under your rules of procedure for a continuance, there has to be good cause shown. So if an applicant says, I want to continue this, but I'm not going to come in and tell you why, you as the commission have every ability with that application to say, no, we're not going to continue
We're
this.
going to hear it now, yeah.
We're going to have this hearing, and, oh, the applicant's not here to represent themselves? That is, you still have some power and authority there. The only thing we're recommending is that when it comes to withdrawals, the application no longer exists. And so telling an applicant, you have to come in for something that you no longer are bringing forward doesn't make sense. And that's something where staff, if there are people here, we are happy to meet with the public. And quite frankly, I'll say, the applicant withdrew yesterday. There's not a lot we can do as a staff. But the other thing is, typically, if there is a crowd here, it's usually because they are in opposition to something. So coming in and finding out that application is withdrawn is usually inducing relief from them. Is, yes, it's frustrating you came out for the evening and you don't have to be here, but at the same time, it's not moving forward.
And I think the onus is on us as a staff is to, if that situation happens, and we've lived through one of those recently, and if the applicant, you're right, and Mike, you were the other day, you've convinced me that there really is nothing legal that we can require that person to come here and say, I'm withdrawing. The embarrassing thing for that applicant is if we have done our best to, however we have a distribution list or whatever, that we would know who to notify, there's gonna be that problem of notification. But I think it starts with, and again, as I said, Mike has convinced me, I can't legally compel, if somebody withdraws, I can't compel them to be here. Even if it's on the agenda and been advertised, I can't compel them to be here.
Does the withdrawal have to be in writing,
Yes.
signed by the applicant?
Yeah, typically we get them I would say via email. Whoever the applicant is will send us an email saying that they are withdrawing. But we may get a phone call. We do follow up because for our records, we want it in writing.
You have to have it written. Yeah.
And,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, I would say, to your point, in cases where we have gotten contacts through our portal in terms of written comments where people have provided email addresses, we will send notice, and the word may trickle out. We actually, for a different board today, just got a withdrawal of an item that's scheduled for next week. We just put the signs out, and I was like, oh, we're going to send an officer back out to go yank that sign out of the ground. Because they're not moving forward. I can't pull the postcard back, but at least I can pull the sign out, so somebody may go, oh, that sign was up for 2 days and now it's gone. What's going on?
Yeah. Commissioner Lennon.
I guess, first of all, I agree with the blue part. Right, but to be clear, the copy we have does not contemplate that.
It does not, and that's why, this was something we initially discussed with the chair and vice chair. And the thought process at that time was, no, they should come in. And as we discussed it more, one of the things we sat down again, when we do regulations, we look at how are we going to enforce something. And if we can't enforce it, we don't want to put it in a regulation. And that's really where we landed with this withdrawal is, there's no way for us to force an applicant to come in here. And if an applicant doesn't come in, you can't continue it, you can't make the application go forward. So we wanted to bring this to your attention and say that what was put in your packet doesn't reflect this, but we think that this is something that should be changed to just say withdrawals, they're just gone. And in talking with Mike earlier, he's like, honestly, if you take this out, we could probably just take out the entire paragraph on withdrawals altogether, because it's not something you're dealing with.
So John, I was going to say, so what, if we adopt these proposals, the blue is what we would be adopting, so that no one would have to come in?
You would address that in any motion, and then we would make the corrections before it goes to council.
So on the continuance, and I don't know if this is a typo or shame on me, I didn't know this, but the second sentence reads, "The commission must state the reason for said continuance, and by its action, charge the planning staff with placing the request on the next agenda for the specified meeting." I don't think
you guys see what you're reading, yeah.
I don't think we've ever done that. But it's either it's a typo and that should say applicant, or we have to say why we're continuing it.
Well, let's go to tonight. Let's use tonight's example.
Why'd she continue it? That's what made me think of it. I'm not picking on Amy, but I don't think she, right.
Yeah, but I think the point where I'm going with to try to answer your question is by virtue of the fact that we accepted her continuance, I believe that by virtue says, and we said, it was going to be on the September 10th meeting, that by definition infers that you guys go adjust whatever you need to adjust and notifications and whatever.
No, and
You're with me on that.
I get that. It just says, to me, the words on the paper say, the commission must state the reason for said continuance.
So I think what I'm hearing from Commissioner Lennon is no problem with doing a motion to continue to a date specific, which then directs us to make sure that we advertise and do that
Right.
properly. So for our attorney, can we strike the portion that says they have to state the reason for the continuance?
I think if you read that together with the first part of section F, that you're the one taking the action on the request, and the assumption would be that the commission would restate essentially what the justification offered by the applicant was. I agree with Commissioner Lennon that maybe it's not as clear.
Yeah, because, and again, I apologize, Amy, I'm sorry if you're watching, but, not picking on her, but she didn't, did I miss it?
I understand the point you're making, and I think what that says is I, as an example, as the chair, need to be more pressing on why, asking that direct question, why are you asking for discontinuance? Because we've done that with other continuances.
Well, and I would, yes, sir, and I would hearken everybody back to the continuance that we had for an issue that later went on to that alphabet soup option, that they came in and continued once or twice. And we had a room full of people who had made the trip and spoke very, passionately.
If I remember that meeting, no, you're absolutely correct. And if I remember that meeting, when two things happened. One is, he was asked directly, why are you continuing? And he basically, we're not ready and we need to, do a couple things. And if you remember, right or wrong, my response to him was, you're right, you're not ready. Now, probably overstepped my authority with that admonition, but.
But wouldn't it have been better if we'd have known why he wanted to continue?
More specific. And I think what it does is this verbiage states to me, I'm okay with the verbiage as it is, because it just reminds me, or anybody that sits in this chair, that we just need to be more specific about making sure the applicant answers that question, and that's kind of my only reaction. I think it's,
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I didn't mean to belabor it, but it just.
No, it's fair.
made me think about it.
That's
Thanks.
why we're going through this.
That was a tough one, because it was continuance, withdraw.
Well, and again, to the staff's credit, they tried to, on that particular one, they tried to notify as many people as possible, and the homeowners still, filled the seats, and so they participated in the process. And so anyway, sorry, Linda, go ahead.
That's all I have. Those are the only changes, so we just wanted to run through those and note that we had a suggested change from what was in your packet.
Can I belabor withdrawal for 1 second?
Go right ahead.
Not belabor it.
Do you have a reason?
No. So withdrawals, can those be brought to the first and second item on the agendas if they're in there, rather than it being buried down and then him having to move it up?
Well, but again, there's no action for you to take.
Understand, but if there's somebody sitting out there and they're sitting waiting on you're saying if it's been advertised, it's going to show up on our agenda, and they're still going to, may still show up.
Correct.
So
And
can we just
sometimes-
make the statement that this item has been withdrawn and move on?
If we know before we publish the agenda, we will put that statement on the agenda itself.
Sure.
So you will see, just like you saw tonight, that there was going to be a request for continuance. The applicant notified us before we published the agenda, so we were able to put that out there.
Yeah.
If it's a case where they withdraw the day before, then we will notify the chair so that you can make that announcement and say, item number 5 has been withdrawn. There will be no hearing at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lennon?
But the chair also has we can do the same thing we did tonight, which is to move a continuance up.
Correct.
Okay.
Last but not least, the staff will just direct those applicants that aren't as represented by an attorney or legal counsel, that if they're just an individual, they don't need to be here. And if they did show up, they're not going to come to the lectern anymore.
For a
Right.
withdrawal, but if
You would just keep them from even coming up here.
For a withdrawal, we would let them know the application's withdrawn, you do not need to attend. For a continuance, it doesn't matter if they are represented by legal counsel or not.
Somebody
If
needs
it's
to
a
be here.
continuance, they need to attend because they need to explain to you, the commission,
which is our
why
prior-
they are
prior
asking
point.
for a continuance at that late point in time.
But again, to clarify, Linda, it's only if the public notice had already gone out?
Correct.
Yeah.
If the public notice, if we have not advertised in the newspaper, sent out postcards, or posted signs, you will not see those continuances because we simply will not put them on the agenda. We will just administratively move them to whatever month they are asking to be moved to. It's only when we have done those notice requirements that we then at that point, you do have to take formal action because it has been advertised for a hearing on this day. So you have to take action to continue that to a date, time, place certain.
You know, and it's interesting because do you guys, I know you put a lot, council puts a lot on the webpage, you guys put a lot on the webpage. Is there any way to track how many hits you're getting on that thing to understand how productive?
IT.
I mean,
Pat's
it's a
telling me
question,
IT can,
That's a different department.
Yes, but Patrick, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's, if we put out a notice that, the day of something's been withdrawn, I mean, the best you can do is put it out on the webpage and hope people go, are diligent about it. I don't know.
And again, we put out applications. If you look at your webpage, you will see 2 tabs. One is what are the upcoming public hearings for this meeting?
Yeah.
And then you will also see other upcoming applications that as we get them, that are just kind of pending in the background, so people know they're there.
Not to belabor the point anymore, so do we need a motion to, I do have to have a motion?
Yes. So this does have to be approved by the council, so we would recommend a motion to approve with the change if you accept it on withdrawals.
Yeah.
And then we will bring it forward to the council for their approval.
Do I have a motion to accept?
Mr.
Given the-
Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended rules of procedures for the Wilmington Planning Commission with the addition of staff's recommendation in regards to commission action on withdrawals.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Lennon made the motion. Commissioner Adams seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, okay. Give me 1 minute to do this for Amy here.
Continue with items from staff, or do you
Yeah,
want to jump back?
go ahead and let's jump into a couple of the things.
All right, I'm going to start with the easy one first, which is just a reminder that due to the construction of the new council chambers over at Skyline Center, we made a change to your calendar several months ago for the months of July and September. We are trying to give the construction a window because they will need about a 3-week time frame to, when that space is done, to move all the equipment from this room over there to set up for new meetings. And so your July meeting is going to be July 16th, and your September meeting is going to be September 10th.
And that's important because we asked this last time and we were going through, and I know Brian said the September meeting was the 9th, but that's city council meeting, so that's what, so it's, again, make note of those on your calendar.
So, and I will say, I believe our hope is that on that September 10th meeting, you will be meeting in the new council chambers over at Skyline Center. So, but the big one is your next in July, the meeting is on the 16th, so a little bit of a different meeting cadence for you. Second, I know we mentioned last month that Travis, who's here this evening, had done a presentation to the council at one of their briefing sessions on the Greater Downtown Plan, just giving them a high-level overview. We have, based on the feedback we got from them and the level of interest, we are working with the staff and the council office to schedule the first of what we think will probably be 2 joint work sessions with the council and the planning commission. And I'm just going to warn you now, we're looking at about 4 hours for each of those work sessions. If we can get through the entire plan in one, we will be happy to do that. But just as I said, based on the questions we were receiving from council members and the level of interest, we wanted to make sure that we're giving adequate time for all of you to discuss the recommendations of that plan.
So would it help if everybody here gave you, sent you some available dates to
right
work
now,
with?
right now, staff for the council is polling them for a specific day.
Sure,
and
it's gonna-
they're in
yeah.
August, and so if they're available, then we will let you know. And see it, and hopefully folks are available as well. We are trying to stay with the council briefing cadence of meetings, so the idea being that after council briefing, we would go into one of these workshops because they're already here.
So that's usually like a Monday or something, isn't it?
Usually a Monday morning.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they do their agenda briefing at 8:30 in the morning.
Okay.
And then last but not least, last night the council met. They had 3 items under consideration. One was the initial zoning for the annexation off of Carr and New Center, as well as the rezoning of properties for that were already in the city. And that was approved by the council last night for a townhome development. And the second was the townhome development on Coville Avenue, which rezoning, which was also approved by the council. The third item was the proposed land development code amendment, which you all invested a lot of discussion over 2 meetings into the recommendation to eliminate special use permits and replace it with conditional zoning. And the council continued that to the first meeting in August and asked staff to work with you to look at how we can pare back and reduce the number of uses that need special use permits. And so I believe the chair mentioned to me that he has a suggestion on that to bring to you.
Yeah, last night at the meeting, and I don't know who got did you get to watch the replays or watch it?
I watch it every time.
You know, and I've heard the phrase happy accident today, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But Richard and I were sitting side by side, and, you know, just by accident, we were sitting there, and a couple of council used it, let's get it back to these guys. So what I'm proposing is the following. I mean, I think we have a mandate, I believe, Linda, to whatever it is we're going to suggest back to council is to get that to them for their July meeting, right?
Actually, we're okay at the first meeting in August, so.
Okay, so then we need to get it back in front of this group.
In July.
In July. So here's what I'm proposing, and since I'm proposing, and Richard and I talked about this last night, is I'm proposing let Richard and I, because we both, as it turns out, represent, you know, the difference of views at our last meeting. Let me finish.
Okay.
Is we would go work with Linda and Brian and Mike and you know, flush out, make suggestions, and, you know, as a subcommittee, and bring it back to the group in our July meeting. That's what I'm suggesting.
Last night, they said that we weren't going to be voting on it, so are we now voting on it in July?
They were not asking for
they
a
weren't
vote.
asking
They
for
were
a vote.
asking,
Right.
the council is suggesting a work session. They wanted your input, but they were not asking for a new vote. They continued this, but were asking for input
The last
from the
thing I heard
commission.
on it was that it would be coming back in front of them in July. So it's not until August now.
I think there were a lot of dates being thrown around last night, and July was one of them. And then our city attorney basically said that they would feel more comfortable with
the first meeting in August. Yeah, that's, because Livy and I did the same thing. I was, knowing we were going to talk about it tonight, what are the dates, what are the drop deads? And you're correct. They were very clear about, towards the end of that whole discussion, about they're not asking us to re-vote on it, but they do clearly, and there were a couple of nice respectful comments about this is why we have our planning commission here, is to look at that. So, I'll take that as a really need to hear from you guys. So in lieu, and my suggestion comes in lieu of having, 4 or 5 commissioners together in a room, therefore mandating advertising a meeting, public meeting, advertising, which if we're not going to vote on something, I'm not sure why we would need that, but if we get more than four or more, we would have to advertise as a public meeting.
And my just input into that is I've worked on several special use permit projects. The very first one I worked on was a learning experience.
Yeah.
But I think that knowledge is important.
That's fair.
I'm not trying to insert myself, but I think it's good to have somebody who's been through the process. The most knowledgeable ones are the attorneys, the Sam Franks, the Matt Nichols, Amy Schaefer, that get up in front of us because they know the legal standing of everything we're talking about. So I watched it, and I think it's good, but I think we need to be, whether we have to put out a public notice or not, I think we need representation from the board and the different thoughts.
Well, that's why, and again, like I say, Richard and I were sitting here, and we're both on, opposing views on how to get here. So I thought the council last night was, I think for the first time, fairly clear on what they're looking for, which is helpful one way or the other. So.
And is what their direction they're looking for is to reduce the number of uses that require it? So
I think Councilwoman Andrews made the comment, the goal here is to reduce the number of S's, and all the rest of the council, yes.
And then those would just be administratively approved. That would go to a staff level use approval, correct?
Ace, what I think they're looking for is, and I always unfortunately think of things in terms of a chart. So if you look at the table, the infamous table, it has 22, scenarios, which include 9 of the special use. What I think they're looking for, and Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the comments we heard last night were, can we reduce the number of uses that require a special use permit? And I will say, Commissioner Kofer, Brian and I had actually sat down yesterday afternoon before that council meeting in anticipation that if they got into specific uses, we've already done a preliminary look and said, here are things that we think could go to prescribed conditions based on what's already in the code, that we don't need a special use permit. The other piece that we heard was there still was the desire to have the public be able to weigh in, and that there was still some level of frustration with that special use permit in certain cases, that it really was inhibiting public participation, and they want to be able to hear from people. So I think it was try and reduce the number that need this process, but at the same time also looking at what uses really should be there. What uses need the special use permit process? We did hear from a few folks who asked that we keep that tool in our toolbox. And then I think the other is, then are there others that we say, this is not a special use permit, this should be a conditional district zoning? So taking that proposal that went from replace all the S's with CZ to let's refine that and say, okay, do we replace some of the S's with C's, which is permitted subject to prescribed conditions? Do we keep some of them as S's, and then do we change some of them to CZ?
Mr. Chair, I too watched the recording, and my words, what I heard last night was acceptance of the reality that this was going too fast, and that the 4-3 vote of our body was mentioned multiple times.
Right.
The tool in my toolbox, Mayor Pro Tem utilized that.
Did.
I think that, in my mind, this is, and I know I may differ a little bit on this from some of you, but my opinion is this is a major policy change to the LDC. And in most every case prior, as long as I've lived here, we've had stakeholder involvement before a policy. If this is truly nothing more than a procedural change, which is what staff has told us, then let's get feedback from those that do the procedure. Let's get feedback from the consultants, from the attorneys. Now, I know there's a propensity to say, well, we know what they're going to say. They want to make it easy. Well, then why did we get their input when we were doing the whole redo of the land development code? We got feedback from engineers, from architects, from developers, real estate people. I think when I made the comment that I did last time about not good government, it was a frustration with that we as a body with varying levels of experience on this matter, you know, and then it goes respectfully to a body where there's probably less varying levels of experience on this matter. I feel like we need to get feedback from those that deal in this arena on a regular basis, because I will just tell you, in the multitude of conversations I have had, I'm getting very different opinions on the legal aspect, the procedural aspect, all the things we've already talked about. So I'm not going to rehash all of them. But I think it would be beneficial if this is truly a procedural change, let's put everybody in a room and talk about it. That's my 2 cents.
I would agree, and I think if you just make that the sole focus of that meeting, then you're not, you know, trying to get to the next agenda item. And the other thing I would say on that topic is that we did have one member of the community speak, but I felt like the context was outside of the scope of the conversation, because it was more about the framing of going from R15 to MD17, which is not what we're talking about here. And so, and all due respect to Madam Attorney, some of her examples were also developers, you know, but this is use. This was not anything to do, in my opinion, with development so much. And maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. But to finish though, John, I think it does deserve a sole conversation, if that's what.
Well, and because I believe, I mean, I've had the comment multiple times from people that I've talked to that have said, we're probably not against doing away with SUPs, but the manner that we're going about it, there's so many unknowns. And so I mean, I've also been told the public can speak at those hearings. It's a different form of testimony.
Well, let me.
And so, and again,
Go ahead.
And so I think it behooves us to put as much thought and research into this as possible. Maybe we get somebody from the School of Government. I mean, they have a whole, unfortunately, they don't have a class schedule. They have a whole portal, educational portal for $100. You can go SUP hearings and how to do them. Maybe we need to get somebody from there to come down as part of this, because to me, this is a major deal. And to address the concerns of council, we want to make sure we're giving them the best recommendation that we can.
I think, and I'm trying to read into people's minds here, I think the mission that we have in front of us is to, you know, that if I'm looking out there that says, today, I use an SUP, you know, permit approach to do the following, if that can be shown to council that the same thing can be done through the conditional rezoning, you know, in other words, nothing is taken away. You can still get from point A to B. I think that's an important thing, and I think we've had that discussion amongst ourselves several times. I will tell you the interesting thing about this thing that puzzles me is, you know, for a year I ran quasi-judicial hearings, and I will tell you, either I was doing it wrong, or you know, the event that has caused this entire discussion to occur was done wrong or was done right and I've been doing it wrong or the other way around. But I will tell you, when we ran, you know, quasi, you know, judicial hearings, it was, you know, before you even go into the agenda, it's anyone wishing to speak on an item on the agenda under oath needs to be sworn in, okay? And that was acceptable to the city attorney that was, you know, working on the Board of Adjustment at the time. And there was never a question that was a wrong procedure.
Commissioner
Okay.
Pollock, can you adjust your microphone, please?
I'll get closer, I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Amy. So the point I'm making is what we all saw in that council meeting, and my apologies to those that were running the meeting, the voir dire portion of that meeting has left me confused as hell, because that was, the way that was run, if you were a citizen, you know, that was not conducive to getting input, because bottom line, I don't care if it's legislative or it's quasi-judicial, it is up to the governing board, whether it's, you know, the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment or the City Council. It's up to them to decide what's real and what's not.
Well,
Okay?
and I heard last night, too, was asking the city and the county to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because there's different processes that the city has and the county has, which is also confusing for us that are in the business, much less citizens. So I do think it would be we're a small county, to talk to each other and to see what's best practices. When we first continued it, we asked planning staff to come back with other examples of maybe how other people were doing. I still would like, you know, to see that, and why have
But
people done away?
you don't think that the examples that they brought to the table in our
Charlotte.
May meeting were
Charlotte?
what?
Charlotte? That's what I heard, Charlotte?
Yeah, the explanation if I may, the explanation we got for Charlotte was that nobody was still working there, or nobody who was part of that transition was still working there.
But it was an indication that they consciously made the transition.
No question.
Okay.
Just wanted to know how they did it.
Yeah.
And they're a total different government than we got there.
Yeah, and I think
I want to be sure.
the other, I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, to your point, I think it was Councilman Rivenbark last night who said, we didn't used to do it this way. Speaking about SUPs and how testimony was handled and how that meeting ended up going. So I just, respectfully, I appreciate the attempt to minimize the impact of this on the rest of the commission members, but for me personally, I think this warrants stakeholder involvement at some level and making sure that we put the absolute best recommendation forward to council.
Jump in with a funny little real-time example of where perhaps an SUP is relevant and necessary for the city of Wilmington with the Nourish NC case earlier. You know, I mean, we're going down the path of a developed site that needs to expand in a pretty benign way, and it required a rezoning to allow them to do that. So the tools in the box when, as Commissioner Adams said, a code cycle changes and all of a sudden very simple syntax and text is removed that had a definition, or the social services maybe didn't have a definition. I mean, we're getting into like the real weeds of text and interpretation of a use, and to remedy it, we've now rezoned we've recommended a rezoning on a property that, you know, so there's a lot of moving parts there, and I understand and respect the fact that, you know, a policy change has far-reaching implications that are unforeseen, and nobody wants to do that. Obviously, it was kicked back to us for a reason.
Well, it was let's be clear, it was kicked back to the staff with the statement that they want the Planning Commission involved in the process. Here's the thing that resonated with me last night was Councilman Rivenbark. his comment, and I'm going to just paraphrase because I'm bad at quoting, the spirit of his comment about ensuring that people who want to participate, want to speak, have the ability to do that. Whether they choose to do that is obviously, up to them. The thing I can tell you from personal experience, and I said this last time, and I'll say it again, what bristles to me, and you're right, John, depending on who you talk to, you get different opinions on what should happen, and some comments are just really benign, and some are just extremely pointed in one direction or the other. So it's an emotional issue. Part of it is just the element of change makes it an emotional issue, and I get that. I'm very sensitive to that. But what bristles, and I will say it again, is the feeling that I have picked up that that says we have to keep the SUPs because the paid specialists that are brought to the table by the applicant, their expertise far outweighs, the people in the neighborhood or what have you. And I can't swallow that. Yeah, I just can't. I mean, everybody has a right to speak, okay? So, having said that, let's figure out what we're going to do. I made a suggestion. I'm not seeing a lot of people jump up for joy and go, yay, attaboy. So what do we,
Your suggestion was
my
basically
suggestion was take a couple of us, Richard and I were there last
like a
night.
spokesperson for different sides.
Yeah, I mean, just, create a subcommittee.
I don't know if it's so black and white, really. I think it's a more robust conversation than that. Like, it's not, I'm on one side or the other. I'm always going to stand right in the middle. So, and even that case that came up tonight, I'm not kidding. I wanted to say jokingly, like, maybe we should use an SEUP here.
Well, Ace, my suggestions stem from, I know Richard's feelings from our May meeting, and I know my feelings. So it's just by accident that, we're both sitting there. Yeah. I mean, this is not a statement that says our expertise is any better than anybody else's here on the dais, and it's not at all.
And that may be the most palatable and efficient way to use our time, rather than try to get us all in a room, a little breakout session where we talk about this issue.
And then let me finish. And then to come back at our July meeting and report back, we would have a significant piece of the agenda would be on this item.
Yeah, let's give it a try.
That was my thought. If that doesn't work for you guys, then I'm open. I mean, but I feel like there's a mandate to the staff that we have to participate in, and we need to get on with it. So that's just my thought. Huh?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Oh wait, she's talking. Linda, how many people outside the planning department did planning staff talk to before bringing this before the planning commission the first time?
I believe Brian spoke to some other communities, but I could not, unfortunately, I can't answer that. Brian did all of that legwork.
So is it fair to say that no stakeholders were consulted?
I don't, if you're talking in terms of the development community, consultants, attorneys, no.
Okay.
I don't think
No,
so.
they were not consulted? No. Okay. So me personally, just speaking for myself, I don't necessarily need to be in the room, but I need to know that people that deal with this on a regular basis and can address the concerns of balancing property rights with the right of the public to be able to speak, there is some way to do that, right? We're not the first municipality to struggle with this. So the people who know more about this, in my opinion, need to be part of that conversation.
I agree, but I mean, it's a public hearing, so all the public are welcome. The stakeholders, in the first one that we continued, Mr. Nichols sat back there and didn't speak. The second one, Mr. Frank sat back there but never came up to the lectern to speak.
He was here last night.
And they were all there. You're welcome to this, but we'd have to directly invite them.
Let's let him finish.
But if I may, so there's a big difference between testifying at a public hearing and contributing in a stakeholder meeting to consideration of a policy change.
So a more casual venue.
Correct.
Right.
So I think, because I think the thought, at least for me, would be once it reaches the hearing state, there's a decision that's going to be made, right? And so my point is just that people that are in this space, and from both sides, I mean, those, if there are members of the public who want to come and say, well, we think we should have the right to speak for 20 guaranteed minutes, great. I mean, there's legal considerations of that, but I think that we need to hear from the people who this is going to impact.
Well, Commissioner Adams, you're going to.
I think what you're proposing, John, I mean, is a good idea. I mean, someone who lives and represents a design professional community, that group would surely like to be part of a dialogue around this. I don't think that it has to be in a public forum either, right? I mean, there are task forces and work sessions that happen outside of our scheduled meetings on a monthly basis all the time, and those feel more like the right kind of venue to have a discussion like this as opposed to one of our agenda items, to me.
Ron, any thoughts?
No. Nothing that hasn't been said already. I mean, I'm fine with you and Richard doing it. I'm fine with John's suggestion that get the people that are doing this, using it, to put input, however it needs to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in no rush. It seems like we are kind of moving along, but, you know, council sent this to us, and we tried. And then tried again, and it sounds like this is coming back one more time. And, you know, information's never bad to have. If more is needed, you know, if you guys want to meet and see if it works out and bring it back, and it comes back, and, you know, John brings up, well, you guys, but it didn't touch this, and so forth and so on, so be it. You know, I'm in no rush. I'm not going anywhere.
Like I said, I'm just trying to find a path forward to accommodate. So, Livian, you look like you're going to say something.
Did I?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I think to me, the timing of the first time we heard it, and then the county hearing it the next night,
Yeah.
there's definitely conversations going on there. You know, what makes up a good board is we have different philosophical beliefs and things that we do for a living or whatever, but I agree with the not rushing something that doesn't need to be rushed. If city council didn't want to make a decision last night, then they did that for a reason, and I think we need to explore it, if not even for our own learning, as to all the different dynamics that are around the SUP process. So I don't think it needs to be a knee-jerk reaction. I just think it's odd how it's come about. So that's all I'll say.
Okay.
The underlying theme that I think I've heard from council and a lot of us as well, we want the public to have input. The way the rules are written around the special use permit, it doesn't prohibit input, it just limits how the input is in. I don't know that we're ever going to make these two things match to where everybody can come say whatever they want to say, good, bad, indifferent, good standing, not standing, it doesn't really matter. I don't know you can make the two until we say, okay, we're going to remove special use permits and we're going to conditional zoning. I mean, that's kind of the choice that we're in right now, the way I see it. I've marked through, and I think you said you and Brian did a similar thing. I mean, I've gone through the special use, the list of uses, and marked out which ones I think would not need either A, they don't need to be in there at all because they're close to a residential area, and why do we all want to go through the headache if we're, you know, if it's not going to work? I left zoo in special use permit so we could keep the tool in our toolbox. But, you know, that is the big issue that is out there is over making sure that we can have public input. Unless we're going to get the big courts to come down and say quasi-judicial is in a different way, then we're all hamstrung.
Well,
we can't just change it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Board of Adjustment. I get that is probably a little more loose.
It's a little,
than-
it's
a little more loose.
It's a little more informal.
Correct. And I understand council's predicament of you only do 3 in 5 years. It's hard to know how to adjudicate that. So I don't know. I think that what I've said the whole time is there's a way to limit the numbers of special use permit, close some of the loopholes that are unintended. I know that they're unintended. Just like the thing we talked about tonight with the text. But we should be able to go through that list, pare a lot of it down. We do have in our code already for many of these uses that would be a special use permit. With prescribed conditions, they're probably getting the same effect. The only thing they're missing is an argument, but beyond that.
Well, a couple thoughts, and then John, I don't.
Sure.
On the topic of participation, all right? Participation comes in many different forms. Comes by, people in the chairs, comes by people at the podium. We have no idea who's watching tonight. I can tell you, I'm stunned at the number of people that come up to me and say, hey, I saw you on TV the other night, which scares the hell out of me, to be honest with you, because I know my makeup's not right, so, and I'm being facetious, but so we really don't know how many people are participating remotely, and that may be fine for them, okay? Second thought is, I think you're absolutely right, Richard. I think you have kind of parallel things going on that may never converge cleanly, all right? And they just, by design, probably just never will. So, I'm going to suggest the following after listening to this and see what you guys' thoughts are. Richard, you already told me you'd be willing to participate in a subgroup. Livian, you said you'd be willing to participate in a subgroup. So, okay, so there's 3 commissioners, and let's cap it at that, if that's okay for the time being. Okay, the other thing, no, I understand, but okay, so is there anybody else? Because I want to try and get some direction moving forward.
I was about to suggest that direction. To finish your thought, as I mentioned a few minutes ago.
This will be good. You're going to finish my thought.
I don't need to be in the room.
Yeah.
What I'm about to say is my opinion.
Yeah.
Think of how different this would have gone had staff stood in front of us the first night and said, we had a meeting. We had 25 stakeholders there, and these are the recommendations that came out. We removed these items. We adjusted the way the procedure goes. We added this period of public comment, which may or may not be able to be, that's an attorney question to be considered. What do you think? That's not what we got. And I think, 100% my opinion, I think council recognized that too, looking at what this body went through over 2 months and a very close vote to come up with it. So I think as long as, if the staff wants to conduct a meeting with stakeholders, that there's an opportunity to put everything on the table. And if some people on this commission are part of that discussion, fantastic. But if I'm sitting here in July and somebody from staff steps up and says, we had a meeting and 25 people showed up and here's what we came up with, I'm going to look at it very differently. And that's been my concern all along, is that didn't happen.
Well, okay, fair point. So we have an opportunity to, I think, coalesce around a direction, and here's what I'm suggesting. Richard and Livy and myself will participate, with Linda's team and Mike. I would suggest, and I know that's not going to, because of vacations, is not going to happen in the next 2 weeks. I can tell you that right now. So first thing I would tell anybody here is you need to be flexible as hell, because the other thing I'm going to ask Mike and Linda to do is, reach out to a couple of, all you can do is reach out to any of the attorneys that come in front of us and ask them if they'd be willing to participate in a discussion. And I think at that meeting is you lay out the work that I know you guys have done, because I talked to Brian, this morning, is lay out the work that you've done, which is this item goes for, here's what it is today, recommending it goes over here, and here's the plus and minus around that. And let's just go through the damn detail and then come back in July at our meeting and, brief the rest of the commission that says, here's what it looks like, and based on this input. So it's, to your point, it's just happening a little bit later than I think you would have liked it to happen, but nonetheless, it's, then you get as much input as you possibly can get, and then you got to move forward.
Yes, 2.5 months later than I would have liked, but if it happens, that's great. To Commissioner Adams' point earlier, I do think there are other stakeholders outside of just the legal profession, whether it's consultants, design professionals, engineers, that do deal with this because they may be called as expert witnesses on traffic or whatever the situation might be.
Yeah, but let me stop you there. What is, they're going to be called as a witness, they're going to be engaged.
I'm not talking about the end result. I'm talking about how do we get this process to a point that addresses council's concern of public input? If we're going to take something away,
Okay.
how do we replace it? And I said a few minutes ago, if, I don't know who this would be, but if, somebody wants to participate as a public stakeholder and say, well, this is what's important to me, that be part of the process, great. Join the club. We'll go from 25 to 26 people in the room. But I mean, I think, I think that, I just want to make sure it's a diverse group of people that, who are subject matter experts.
Entertain me with this, just to help enlighten me. Like, because that example that you just gave of like a traffic expert, I just don't see how that would apply with any of those uses. So like, what am I missing there? I feel like I'm missing something with the experts on the use piece.
There are professionals that will testify. So somebody comes up here and says, people will bring their traffic engineer. Well, in an SUP,
But that's usually R15 to MD17.
No. In an SUP, though, to have standing, they have to be also a qualified subject matter expert.
And that's extremely subjective,
So,
to be honest with you.
fair
It is
enough.
extremely subjective.
So,
I get the expert part. I just, on that table of uses, I just can't see one example where this in the historic district, this use, the recreation on Holly Tree, where we talk about developers, where we talk about traffic engineers, where we talk about stormwater engineering, where we talk about the normal things we talk about on a straight zoning or a conditional district rezoning. With that table of use, I can't pluck a single thing out where I'm like, where we're talking about these specialists, the way we would in a development situation.
Design matters.
I was going to say that.
Does form matter?
So I'll walk down that line.
No,
So like with my zoo.
Commissioner Cofer,
all right?
and I appreciate that. What I'm getting at is not, I just want to make sure that the right people are in the room to contribute to the effort to try and revise what frankly has been a long-standing policy with the city. That's all. I want to make sure the right people are there. And to me, those people are people who are impacted by that process, which to include the public, but people who deal in that space every day, or 5 times over 5 years.
And that's fair enough. That's just the piece that, like, when we had those meetings, we kept talking, a lot of the comments kept coming back. Again, with all due respect to, the city attorney, we were talking about development. We were talking about traffic impact analysis and engineering, and it was like, but we're looking at this very finite table of uses. We're not talking about going from R15 to MD17 with a big project on the corner of Independence and Oleander. This is I kept joking about the zoo piece, but it was just these uses. They're so specific and uncommon. But I wholeheartedly agree that when you make a big policy change,
Well, it
the
comes
more
back to the
information, the
findings
better.
of fact.
What's that?
It comes back to the findings of fact. If you look, the most
But that's
public-
that's procedure. I get bored of I get quasi judicial.
stormwater engineer to say that this site has never had any stormwater engineered on it. For them to come up and explain the problems that people are having now, then these new things that go through 3 different entities to get approved, will improve your stormwater.
That, what the finding of fact relates to, because there is the difference is, in an SUP, because there's a finding of fact and it's quasi-judicial, a certified traffic engineer can stand up and say, the traffic counts for these roads is X, this project will impact traffic. Thus, here's the computer modeling and engineering that answers the questions. John Q. Public can stand up and say, the traffic's going to be awful. It's already awful. It's only going to get more awfuler. That's not a word.
And I get that. I understand the procedure, the differences. I'm just saying, when we look at the city of Wilmington's table of uses, which one of those uses would have the need for a traffic engineer?
Yeah, but I think,
They all do.
I think the issue is, and this is, like I said, this is what's, the fact that somebody has a title after their name, says I'm a licensed traffic engineer, and they get up and they give their opinion, okay? And that's what, based on a set of facts or findings or whatever. Yeah, I understand that, Livian, but I've sat in those same hearings where those people have stood up and given those mathematical, statements, and it takes about 2 minutes to cut them apart into just to shred them into ribbons. So all I'm saying is the applicant has a right, whether it's here or in a quasi-judicial hearing, to bring whomever they bring and determine is an expert to testify on something. What I heard last night and what we ought to be sensitive to, my opinion, is that there are two sides to the thing. There's an applicant, and then there's either a proponent or there's an opponent, and all sides need to be able to make sure that they understand how to participate. If they choose not to, I can't help that. But I think we cannot err on the side that just because, the four findings of fact, I got them. I trust me, I think I could, recite them, after a year running those things. Those have pretty big gaps in them as well because of the interpretation of responsibilities as to who's disadvantaged by what. And those are not anything but opinions at that point. So I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying. What we need to do is move past this discussion and get a process going so we can go execute on what everybody has said tonight. And that's what I think, I'm saying. I got two of my peers to participate with me. That's number one. Linda, we can talk tomorrow if you want. Or Mike, we can talk. And are there any, and I'm going to use the legal guys just as an example. If there's, one or two of them that we, reach out, see if we can get a couple of them want to participate, or a developer. I mean, there's plenty of developers in town. And just, and John, to your point about it, John Q. Public, I'm struggling on who I'd go ask. I mean, I'm sure we could probably find somebody from the whole, Oleander independence discussion that would probably want to talk about process. But
Cindy would probably be, Miss Wolf would be
Cindy would
great.
probably be a very good one.
Her
Yes, as an
example
example.
today was fabulous.
But I think to the
because it's
point
a use.
is, we need to, what is it that we want them to do? Do we want them to as we are, are going to do as a subcommittee of the board of the commission, are we going to review what they've done and make suggestions to try to move this discussion along? Because if we're not careful, this thing's going to go on forever. And it really doesn't need to. It really, in my opinion, doesn't need to. Linda, you look like you're going to say something. Oh.
Right now, I'm just going to try and sum up what I've heard is
Please.
you are creating a subgroup of yourself, Commissioner Collier, Commissioner Jones. Staff will set up a meeting with you. As I said, we've already started the process of going through use by use and saying, are there uses that just don't need special use permits? So we started that before the public hearing last night and before the comments from council. So we will bring that back to the subgroup, and then with the idea that the subgroup then will bring feedback and recommendations back to the commission. And what I'm hearing is a request that we invite a variety of stakeholders to the subgroup meeting to share their thoughts, people involved in the development process as well as the public.
I think that's pretty much what we've said here.
I think the mayor summed it up best last night at the very end, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, I don't know, they may come back and we do away with it, but at least let's make sure that we're really looking into it.
Yeah.
And so that's,
what I heard.
yes, that sums up what I took an hour to explain.
Anybody else comments on that? Does that make sense? You guys okay? I know, Ron, you have nothing to say, so I'm just. Okay. Then Linda, that's what we'll do. And, you know, if you and I want to talk tomorrow, put a little bit more finality, or I'll give you a call, see, and if I catch you, I'll catch you, and
Yeah,
whatever.
Commissioner Pollock mentioned, or Chairman Pollock mentioned, we're probably going to be looking, I would say, at the week of, let me grab my calendar here. Probably June 23rd at the earliest, to schedule that. So, but we'll try and
Okay.
get that scheduled this week so that you have some advance notice.
Okay.
And then we'll try to figure out the other piece of it.
Okay. And if that will that help if the three of us sent you open slots for that week as well, or is that too much data at this point?
At this point, let me start with when,
Okay.
like, Mike, Brian, myself, if there's anyone else from staff that needs to be involved, let's look at we'll send you some slots and calendar slots to look at for that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. He's a, yeah. So, yeah, I left your sweater out in the car. So anything else from any other members of the commission? Anything else? Anything else from staff? Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a second? All in favor? Opposed?